Hello students, today we will discuss next stanzas from the poem Lucy, written by William Wordsworth, who is a famous nature poet because most of his writing is regarding nature, his love of nature. In our previous lectures we have discussed some stanzas from the same poem, and today we will continue with the same poem, Lucy. So let us begin with the first stanza, which is under discussion today. I travelled among unknown men in lands beyond the sea, nor England did I know till then what love I bore to thee. It is past that melancholy dream, nor will I quit thy shore a second time, for still I seem to love thee more and more. I travelled among unknown men in lands beyond the sea. I. I here means the poet. Here the poet is talking about himself. I travelled among unknown men. In these lines, students, in our previous lectures, we discussed that Lucy is a very little girl. She lived in the lap of nature, and nobody was aware where she lived, and when she died, she was actually a child of nature, and the poet loved her very much. So, in these lines, the poet says that in our previous lecture we discussed that she died, uh, and her death is unknown to anyone, to everyone. So, in this stanza, the poet says that I traveled among unknown men in lands beyond the sea. The poet says that after the death of Lucy, he traveled among unknown men. He traveled at he traveled at such places where the people were unknown to him, in lands beyond the sea. He beyond the sea means he traveled to foreign countries which are beyond the sea. Nor England did I know till then what love I bore to thee. The poet says that never before he traveled such countries where he was unknown to the people. Never before that he knew how much love he had for his own country, that is England. It is past that melancholy dream. The poet says that the unhappy dream, melancholy means sad or unhappy. The poet says that the unhappy dream or the sad dream of Lucy's death was almost over. Nor will I quit thy shore a second time. The poet says that now he is in no mood to go abroad or to go to the foreign countries once again. For still I seem to love thee more and more. To love thee. Thee means you, your. The poet says that after traveling to foreign countries, he started loving his own country, his own native land, that is England. So now he is in no mood to go abroad or to travel to foreign countries because he loved his own native land, his own country, England. Next stanza. Among thy mountains did I feel the joy of my desire, and she I cherished turned her wheel beside an English fire. Thy mornings showed, thy nights concealed. The birds were the birds where Lucy played, and thine too is the last green field that Lucy's eyes surveyed. In these lines, the poet gives or the poet expresses his love for his native land. Among thy mountains did I feel the joy of my desire. Among thy mountains, thy means your. The poet says that he has traveled or he loved the mountains of England. Thy means your means the poet is addressing to his own native land, England. Among thy mountains did I feel the joy of my desire. In these lines, the poet is expressing his love for his own native land, England. He loved the mountains, the hills of England, which gave him the joy of his desire, which gave him feeling of happiness, which he desired for a long time. And she I cherished turned her wheel beside an English fire. The little girl and she. Here the poet is talking about his daughter, that is Lucy. And she I cherished turned her wheel beside an English fire. The poet says that the little girl Lucy he loved. She is used to turn the spinning wheel. She is used to turn the spinning wheel beside an English fire, beside the fire in English. So he loved his country dearly. Thy mornings showed, thy nights concealed. The birds were where Lucy played. The mornings of England showed him the shady places. The mornings showed, thy nights concealed. The birds where Lucy played. Birds means shady places. The poet says that the mornings of England showed him the shady places where Lucy played her games. And thine too is the last green field that Lucy's eyes surveyed. The green fields which Lucy saw last with her eyes. And thine too is the last green field. The poet says that the green fields to which Lucy saw with her eyes for the last time before her death also belonged to England. That Lucy's eyes surveyed. Surveyed means that Lucy saw for the last time before her death. The poet says that the green fields which Lucy saw for last time before her death are also in England. So England has become dearer country to him because this country is associated with Lucy, to whom the poet loved dearly. Next stanza. 3 years she grew in sun and shower. Then nature said, "O lovelier flower on earth was never sown. This child I to myself will take. She shall be mine, and I will make a lady of my own." 3 years she grew in sun and shower. The poet in this stanza says that for 3 years she means Lucy, that Lucy for 3 years she lived in sun. She lived in the lap of nature. She lived in sun means she faced sun. And shower here means rain. The poet says that for 3 years Lucy faced sun and rain. Then nature said, a lovelier flower on earth was never sown. Then nature took a fancy to her because she was the loveliest flower which ever grew upon the earth. Means nature loved Lucy because she was the loveliest flower on the earth. This child I to myself will take. She shall be mine, and I will make a lady of my own. Nature would bring her up in her own way. So, after observing that Lucy is the loveliest flower on the earth, nature decided to take Lucy to herself, and it thought that it would bring her up in her own way, and she will grow up, Lucy will grow up into a fine lady. So, in this stanza, the poet has personified the nature. Nature has all the qualities of human being in this stanza because she is eager. Nature is eager to adopt Lucy as her own daughter and to make arrangements for uh, Lucy's physical, mental, spiritual, every kind of education. So, nature in this stanza has been portrayed as a person because she wants to take Lucy to herself and to nurture her in her own way and to make her grow up and to grow her up in a into a fine lady. So, students, today we have covered some more stanzas from the poem Lucy. Try to learn all these stanzas, listen and watch its video and the explanation and discussion. Tomorrow we will continue with our next lecture. Thank you. Thank you very much.